Good day, everybody. My name is Andrew Cooperrider. Welcome to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for political conservative takes about what's going on all across the bluegrass. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a heck of a show for you. Trump has made a early endorsement in the governor's race. We'll talk about that, what it means. Bridgett Ehly has made her bond on her recount. And we'll cover some interesting topics about taxpayer misfunding and taxpayer funds for grooming children in school there, groomers being paid for by you, and also how Disney's wokeism is leading to their demise. And many, many more things will probably come out of my mouth. But before we go on, I want to remind everybody to like and comment, hit the share button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. If you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you so much. Be for sure to tell people about it so they can get the very important news. Of course, as well, please, if you're listening on Apple, review the podcast. It apparently helps it out. I don't know much about that, but it does, I'm told. Once again, share, like, comment, tell people about it. It all helps out. Thank you so very much for joining me, and we will dig into it. But before that, one more thing. Make sure you text Liberty, the word Liberty, to 33777. Text the word Liberty to 33777. That's how you get your action alerts, your events alerts about things such as this. We got an event going on July 1st, our second annual Freedom Festival at Brood. It's going from 6 till 8 p.m. We'll have some speakers there at 7. We've got a couple of people that is pretty much your next state house reps from Northern Kentucky there. Steve Doan will be speaking. Lee Watts, he just ran that second congressional seat, chaplain at the state capitol, as well as conservative commentator. He'll be speaking. Let's see, you've got the Floyd County GOP chair. She's coming up to say some words. That's important stuff. Eastern Kentucky was a Democrat stronghold for a long time, and they're working on it, and we'll see what she has to say. As well, we've got a few other speakers. Richard Hayho from Beans, he's coming, say a few words. He's another shop that fought on these here mandates. He's coming to say a few words, and all this on top of, we'll have some live music, a food truck, some caricatures, some bounce house and inflatables there for the kiddos, as well as yard games, face painting, tons of things, and more stuff. Better than even last year. We had I think around 300 people there last year. We want to have even more this year, and so I welcome you guys. Please come on out, and we'll see what we have going on. Freedom Festival, that is July 1st. It's at Brood here in Lexington. That's at 124 Malibu Drive. Brood in Lexington, 124 Malibu Drive for the Freedom Festival. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors about it, and we hope to see you there. So yeah, Trump has made an endorsement, very early endorsement. He endorsed AG Daniel Cameron very early in this governor's race. I got to be honest, it caught a lot of people off guard, partially because a lot of people, I'm told, have been telling Trump to try to stay out of our governor's race because he doesn't know quite what's going on the ground, because obviously you've got McConnell's pick, which is clearly Daniel Cameron is McConnell's pick for governor, and Trump generally doesn't like McConnell very much. He said some not too kind words about him. And so not kind of knowing the politics and knowing who's behind who, I was told a lot of people had told Trump to kind of stay out of it, but he did endorse. And what's surprising is he endorsed so very, very early. Speculation that maybe Trump thinks that this November is our governor's race, not knowing it's another whole year and a half away before we get to the general, almost a year before the primary. So how does this change things? Well, right now, who we have declared there's a lot, there's 9 people declared, but there's kind of different I don't want to say tiers of candidates because all kinds of crazy things happen, right? But obviously there's candidates that have potential to raise a lot of money and have good name ID. And then there's candidates that don't have necessarily as much potential. That doesn't mean they don't have a chance. It just means that they're not really talked about in the circles a whole lot because it seems like it's a very outside chance for them to win. But so those who are, I guess you'd call them, at least have a better chance, or let's call them this. Let's say they're people that we believe can raise over $100,000, because if you're not able to raise $100,000 even for a governor's race, your chances of winning are really, really, really small. I'm just being honest. I mean, let's keep in mind, Matt Bevin in his first primary race raised $4 million. So that kind of gives you some idea of what I mean by you got to be able to raise at least 100,000 for a statewide race, like the governor's race. So we've got people who are running. We've got Ryan Quarles, Daniel Cameron, of course. We talked about that already. Savannah Maddox, Mike Harmon, Eric Dieters, who's this Northern Kentucky guy, and he's declared running, but there's a little news there. He's not as wealthy as someone like Kraft. We'll talk about that in a second, but he is pretty wealthy. So, he would have dumped some money into this race. He's kind of changed tack there. So you got Eric Dieters, and then you also have some speculation of some other people jumping in, like State Senator Ralph Alvarado, Kelly Craft, who many of you probably don't know. She doesn't poll very high, as much as money as she spent supposedly not polling very high. Kraft was Trump's ambassador to Canada, also ambassador to Canada under Bush, and then Trump's ambassador to the UN after Nikki Haley left. And so it's been a lot of speculation about her running. She's making the circuit. She's making some speeches. She's spending $1.5 million buying a ham for charity. So she's doing those kinds of things that you expect for somebody looking to make a run. So there's been a lot of communication about whether or not she's running. And you have Max Wise kind of talked about a little bit here or there about him running. And I think that's most of the people being talked about that are among the tier where you'd think they'd raise at least $100,000. So how does this work? How does this play out? Okay, so Trump's endorsement means that Daniel Cameron may be able to keep some people out. So anybody who's listened to Kraft speak, Kelly Craft speak at things, knows she was running. She was going to try to run that Trump lane pretty heavy. I mean, whenever she gave speeches, it was Trump, because Trump performed pretty well in the presidential election, obviously, against Joe Biden. And so they've been really hammering that side of things. So just talking about Trump a whole lot. Then, so does the endorsement of Daniel Cameron keep her out? I think that's the biggest indicator. I don't think so. A lot of people have been talking about the Trump endorsement will hit Savannah Maddox very hard. I don't necessarily think so as much. I think Savannah Maddox does have a floor. She's got a base, and that base, I don't know if this Trump endorsement pulls any people off that base or not for her. Because I think there's a lot of people who recognize and understand that while they like Trump, the man, his endorsements just don't carry as much weight. I mean, look at some of his endorsements he made in this most recent primary. I mean, he endorsed all incumbents, and he would endorse people like Brett Guthrie against Lee Watts. And Lee Watts is definitely more of a Trump guy than Brett Guthrie is. And so, he's endorsing people, whether he doesn't know or what have you, but the kinds of people that are sitting in those back rooms mumbling about how Trump needs to get out of the party and his influence and everything else. But yet those same people are more than willing to try to use that Trump endorsement to capture the voters who aren't paying heavy attention to know that these are the kinds of people that actually hate Trump. Now, why is Trump making these endorsements? I've got a couple of reasons why. One is he wants to just have a good win record to his endorsements because it makes him look like he has a lot of influence with the voters still, and that makes him seem have an excised role in the Republican Party moving forward. So he may be making his choices just based upon poll results. The other thing is that Trump, obviously, we know, is looking at another run for the presidency. And this is the same kind of thing we saw out of Rand Paul the last time he was running. He starts making some endorsements and primaries. that he wouldn't probably normally make, but he's making them because he's trying to cut deals for support for his presidential election. So I think that may be what Trump's doing here, is trying to cut deals in order to gather as much support as possible in his run for president. And if he has a governor or two that he's endorsed and he can say, I got you in office, then that can help lead it out. So speculation is that Cameron was working this deal with Eric Trump and nobody else knew about it or anything like that. And possibly, very possibly, Trump didn't even know the election was wasn't this November, but is a whole year and a half away. So what's this mean for somebody like, what's this mean for each candidate that's currently in? Let's talk about this. So for Savannah, what's it mean? I don't know. And I don't know because Savannah obviously has a base. People that follow her are going to follow her regardless. And that base is in well with a lot of the people that'd be swayed by a Trump endorsement. So does that base tell people, look, Trump's got this one wrong, vote for Savannah? I've been seeing a lot of people I know, diehard Trumpers that I know personally, that even after this endorsement are saying, look, he's got it wrong. He doesn't know what's going on. Vote for Savannah. So I've seen that. What's it mean for Daniel Cameron? Obviously, Daniel Cameron thinks he's going to keep out somebody like Kraft. I think that was the main reason to do it, because Kraft represents a real threat to him in the sense that she has an endless amount of money. She's married to Mr. Kraft, who's a coal baron billionaire. So she's got an endless pot of money. She'd easily, I think, dump 10 to 15 million in that race. And that kind of money means Cameron's going to have to raise a lot of money himself. So I think the endorsement is mainly to keep her out. But if she comes in, she's still able to cut up some of Cameron's support. More importantly, too, is you have Ryan Quarles now. Now, Ryan Quarles is just as much of a generally thought of as an establishment guy as Cameron is. He's well liked among the quote unquote establishment, but the establishment voter, I'm going to say it's around 20% of the Republican Party, does not like Trump. They don't. And I'm telling you this, I've knocked doors. And when I was out knocking doors, running for office, about half the people I talked to, well, not half the people I talked to, but I would occasionally get asked what my thoughts were on Trump. And half the people, the minute I said, look, I understand a lot of people have problems with his personal life and the tweeting and everything else. And I think a lot of that was blown out of proportion by the media. However, his policies were great. Look at his foreign policies. Look at his economic policies. How do you look at what's going on now and don't look back and say Trump's policies were amazing? Because we're seeing how bad it can get. I don't know how you do that. But the minute I said I think his policies were great, I'd get the door slammed in my face half the time. The other half of the time, they'd say, well, if you're for Trump, I'm voting for you. Now, that didn't happen at every door that a person asked me what I thought about Trump, but it was 50-50 love-hate for people who want to know about Trump. So I'd estimate there's 20% that will vote for Cameron now that maybe perhaps wouldn't have because of Trump, though how much that 20% didn't he already have, I don't know. And then there's 20%, which actually may be going over to Ryan Quarles now, because they are like, look, I'm not voting for a single person Trump endorses. There's those people who feel that strongly. And so does that now actually move support onto Ryan Quarles? Because when people are sitting there thinking Ryan Quarles or Daniel Cameron, amongst that group, I think they're leaning towards Daniel Cameron. Now at that Trump endorsement, there might be a fairly large chunk that are now leaning towards Ryan Quarles because they are competing for the same voters. Also, as well, you got Mike Harmon. What's it mean to his race? I don't know. Once again, when you've got people cutting up the vote as much as they are, the thing that it means to people like Savannah and Mike Harmon and possibly Alvarado and possibly Max Wise and those candidates, if your name isn't Quarles, Cameron, or Kraft, what it means to you is it may keep Kraft out. I believe that's the only thing it means to you. And if Kraft is kept out, it actually makes it harder for somebody whose name isn't Cameron. But if Kraft is in there, now that gets more interesting because you have somebody that can suck up those votes from Cameron. And that leaves the field wide open. I think that's what it really means. I think that's what's important with our governor's race as well. And it just goes to show you never know what Trump's going to do. And it also goes to show that, hey, look, while you may like an individual politician or candidate or what have you, don't just follow their endorsements blindly, because there's situations and things going on with individual candidates that people just are completely unaware of and don't understand. And that support doesn't always translate. I mean, I'll look at my own race. We still took, 44, 45% of the vote, but Andy Barr had endorsed my opponent. But Andy Barr took 80, 85%, I believe, 90% of the vote in the primary. So clearly there was a large percentage of people that voted for Andy Barr, but did not vote for the candidate that Andy Barr endorsed. And so just keep that in mind. Just because somebody likes somebody and votes for somebody in a primary or in a general doesn't mean that they're voting for that person, who that person endorses. Just want to remind you of that, especially too with the coverage they're getting on it. And the coverage is not like, oh, wow, you got to vote for this guy, Trump. It's a lot of people being like, what is Trump doing? And that also is important too, that the coverage leaves people asking questions. The coverage isn't, wow, amazing. The coverage is, this is kind of strange. And I think that starts to shape it. But who knows? Who knows how that's used in advertising? Who knows how that's used in mailers? All right. So in the news of elections too as well, we've got the Bridgett Ehly recount, asked for $21,000 bond. She has posted that bond. So it looks like in the Bridgett Ehly versus David Osborne race, there will be a recount. Once again, Ehly does not think this changes the outcome of the election. She just wants to, quote unquote, check the tech. That's the saying they're going with, to see what the difference are. These are all new counting machines. And so they want to see, how do they perform? How do they stack up against the hand count? What's the discrepancy there? Remember too, if a large discrepancy is proven, that $21,000 gets returned to her. What's the large discrepancy? I don't know. Does the discrepancy have to throw off the election? I don't know. But it is interesting to see. And one thing worth note that I think is also interesting, and use this information in your mind however you want to. $21,000. I believe she raised $21,000 for the recount. Money people know they may not get back. And while she's running for office, though, she raised $11,000 while she was running. And so all I got to say to people is I love it. I love the fact you guys are willing to donate to election integrity causes. We've got a fundraiser going on at Brood for the Republican nominee for the Fayette County clerk. And we're trying to ourselves fundraise to help get clean and fair elections. That's great. However, if you could show that amount of support to a candidate when they're running for office too as well, before the voting happens, you can also help them actually win if things are free and fair, because they still need money in order to win elections. You just do. That's just, speech is free, communication costs money. And you need to have some money. You don't necessarily need as much as the establishment, but you need to have some money in order to win elections. So just use that as an anecdote moving forward to know you need to donate to elections. So also, in today's episode is my favorite part here. In today's episode of how are your tax dollars being badly spent, I bring to you the state Senate Republicans. Now, this money was already appropriated in the budget, but the state Senate Republicans appropriated $1.5 million for a Asian garden, botanical garden. You'll see the concept there off to the right. Now, if you notice, there's something important about this garden, is it's not a garden you can eat anything out of. I do not believe you can. It does seem to have some nice dragon statues, a couple of red Asian-ish bridges. Maybe it's Japanese, maybe Chinese. I don't know. It would make sense it being Chinese, considering it's the SRCCP that gathered the funding for this here wonderful project. Look at that. See, you can see here's a picture of concept. You got some bonsai trees you can check out. Now, the garden's not just being built for $1.5 million. Anybody who has ever taken care of a bonsai tree knows that needs a lot of upkeep and maintenance. So on top of the $1.5 million being spent to build the garden, we're also going to have now the maintenance of the garden you have to pay for. You can't afford to put gas in your car. You can't afford to put food on your table. But at least you're going to have something pretty to look at in the wonderfully safe city of Louisville. Oh, hold on. It's not very safe, is it? So after you risk your life driving through Louisville and arrive at the botanical garden that's downtown, I believe that's where they're planning on putting it, downtown. After you've risked your life, you can then arrive at a garden that's pretty and reminds you how beautiful life can be, which will be amplified by the shots you've had to dodge getting in there from the shootings. Okay. Because, you know, I'm sorry, this is a $1.5 million chandelier in a haunted house. Can we not spend $1.5 million on things like crime reduction, funding the police? No, nothing like that. Can we spend $1.5 million on helping? Georgia recently was talking about this wonderful program that they did that had a lot of effect. The Georgia governor, he was talking about these programs they put in place where the state police had been going in and closing out warrants, finding people with outstanding warrants. They've arrested over 500 people in the last year that normally wouldn't have been arrested, that have outstanding warrants for violent crimes, including murder and rape. But here in Kentucky, we spend $1.5 million on a garden. Now, I get it. Food security is an issue. At first, I heard it and I said, oh my goodness, have they taken the step to increase Kentucky's food security issues by putting in place a garden that you can get, things like tomatoes and cucumbers and whatever else out of to make sure that when our supermarkets are no longer being stocked with food from China, because we, of course, don't often buy from our local farmers. But when we do finally say, okay, we're buying from our local farmers, and when that stock runs out because fertilizer has gone so high or food prices are skyrocketing, we'll have a local garden that maybe those who are having issues with food security could go to pick from. I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great? No, it's $1.5 million on a garden for you to look at. So I know you're not going to be able to afford your gas to get there, but maybe if you walk, you can then look at the garden and try to listen to the serene surroundings as you hear the grumbling of empty stomachs of people who can't afford to put food on the table. But it's only $1.5 million of your money. But, it's not enough that they just spent it. Here's the real problem. Here's the real gap and misunderstanding. Here's the real issue that these establishment Republicans need to understand that their voters have problems with. It's not just you're blowing our money on useless, benevolent projects while we are struggling. It's not just that. It is that you celebrate it. Not one, not two, but 3 posts last I looked on the the KY Senate Republicans. I keep calling them the Senate Senate Republicans Caucus Campaign Party, after the CCP in China there. My mistake. I keep confusing that their communism is different. But so the KY Senate Republicans, not one, not two, but 3 posts you have here on June 17th, 9 a.m. Senate President Stivers and Majority Caucus Chair Julie Rocky Adams, who most recently, side note on Julie Rocky Adams, she was on a podcast recently where she was talking about how the leadership was sitting in a room. They were sitting in a room talking about education. And she said, well, I asked them, do you feel like your parents, your parental rights are being violated by the schools? And they all said, well, no, we don't think so. And so I asked, why are we even passing bills on this? Julie Rocky Adams' kids are like grown. Like, I'm pretty sure they're around my age. Why would she even notice if her parental rights are being overloaded? But of course, it's not about what she thinks. It's about the fact that your Republican voters do think their rights are being violated by the schools as parents. And the fact that they think that means you should do something about it. And you pretended to do something this last session while killing bills that actually address the issues we parents are concerned about. And you did it for this reason, that you believe our parental rights aren't in danger. Shame on you, Julie Rocky Adams. But going back to the post. So we got a Senate President Stivers and Julie Rocky Adams are hanging out there at this wonderful press conference because, of course, we can't just give $1.5 million to something we should have never given to. We have to push it. So they detailed the $1.5 million in funding from the 2022 biannual budget for the addition of an authentic Japanese garden at the site. Watch for coverage later. See, they're not just wasting $1.5 million of your money on BS like this. I'm sorry, I'm trying to frame out the image overlay. Anyways, they're not just wasting $1.5 million on dumb BS. They're celebrating it. They're saying, you should reelect us. Look at our accomplishments. We gave you something pretty to look at while you are paying 28 cents, 27 cents a gallon for your gasoline and just tax to us. While you're paying an income tax, while you're paying a sales tax, while you're paying for this and that, while you're paying for that, don't worry. Yes, 6% of your food costs is because we're charging you a sales. 6% of your costs are because we're charging you a sales tax. But don't worry. Don't worry. It's going to a nice garden. It's going to a nice, wonderful garden. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And you know what? This isn't even the most upsetting waste of taxpayer funds I've seen this week. Let me show you something else. Let me show you what JCPS did. They decided it was time to groom your kids. That's right. A tweet from JCPS Pride, which I just discovered existed. We'll go into that. And they're not talking about pride like school pride. They're talking about, and that's what I thought at first. I was like, oh, clearly they're talking about school pride. No, they're talking about gay pride. Anyways, our JCPS KY hashtag Pride Parade crew is ready. Thanks to JCPS Super, and that's the superintendent, for his support, and JCPS operations for the bus. So they took a school bus, a taxpayer-funded school bus to transport your school children to a Pride Parade. Now, full disclosure, I've never been to a gay Pride Parade. I know what you're thinking. Shocker. But I have never gone to a Pride Parade. I don't feel like it's my scene. But I have been about 2 years ago. This was the last time I went to the 4th of July parade here in Lexington. I went to the 4th of July parade. I took my wife, took my kid. He was, 7, 8 at the time. Took my kid. And even though they just had their Pride Parade just a short week ago, there was a LGBTQIA plus 13 whatever, a section of the parade. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I'm okay with that. You know, you're a club, you're whatever. You're kind of a club celebrating who you're banging at night. It's kind of strange, but you're a club. It's what you want. So you go out and you go marching and the parade. That's cool. That's cool. And you know what? These pride parades, honestly, well, I wouldn't go to them. If it just wants to be a pride parade that puts in a request, as long as I can have a Christian parade or something like that too, I don't mind. I don't mind. What I do mind is this. While I was at that 4th of July parade with my 7-year-old child, a guy comes by wearing a thong. like not like a thong. Like his a thong. Like with his twig and berries hanging out. Okay, I'm just being honest. And like my kids are. I'm like covering my kids. I'm like, oh my gosh. I literally turned to my wife. Let's be clear. I did not take this picture. Yes, we are using this picture here from Toronto. But anyways, I'm there with my wife and I turned to her and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like that should be indecent exposure, right? Like I've got my 7-year-old kid there. Is it not indecent exposure? Like that should be illegal. Like it would normally be illegal. Like if that guy invited and somehow got my kid alone or in his home and was wearing that around him, we'd lock him in jail, throw away the key. But he's doing it on public sidewalks at a 4th of July parade and we're okay with it. So JCPS is using your taxpayer funds to ship these kids, small children, to a pride parade where no doubt they will see men in drag, which, by the way, drag is simply men dressing up as burlesque dancers / strippers. And if you would take your child to a burlesque show or a stripper show, you're a terrible parent. You're an awful parent. So for that same reason, if you're going to take your kid to a drag show where they are dressing up as scantily clad or burlesque women, sexually women, you're also a bad parent. I said it. You can quote me for it. Write it down. Andrew Cooperrider said it. He said, if you take your kids to a drag show, you're a bad parent. I will stand by that statement because that is a sexual performance. And we know we're going to have guys there wearing thongs, their stuff hanging out, possibly naked. Stuff you would never expose your children to. But not only are we exposing our children to it, we're also shipping them on a bus. And this is indoctrination. And I'm sorry of trying. I am tired of having to defend the fact that, yes, we should teach children normal gender roles. We should. Why? Because that's how you procreate. Our literal species would not continue if we don't teach this. Well, you don't even got to teach it. They're naturally drawn to it. See, the whole reason you have to teach the LGBTQ agenda and you got to teach kids about it is because their natural draw is to not be that way. I'm not saying there aren't some people maybe born different and everything else. I'm not talking about that small percentage. I'm talking about the now 20% of kids identifying as LGBTQ. That is not normal. And you can say, who defines normal? You're defining society. No. How our species procreates and continues on defines what is normal. It's not society. It's not created by even biblical truths. It's created by the simple fact that you can't procreate unless you got a man and a woman. It's just simple. That's why it's normal. Because it's how our species continues. You wouldn't be here listening to this right now if a man and a woman didn't come together somehow. Whether it's in vitro or whatever, it doesn't matter. A man and a woman had to come together somehow. You wouldn't be here. So I'm sorry, but that is normal. And so if you're going to be pushing this agenda, this doctrination, this teaching them, why do I have to pay for it? 60% of our state budget's going to education, funding things like this. Taking kids to see scantily clad adults, to indoctrinate them into the weird sexual fantasies of these people. And I'm sorry. We're not even necessarily, look, if you're lesbian, if you're gay, if you're whatever, that doesn't matter. The point is you're not wearing fetish gear down the street. That's the problem. The problem isn't who you're going to bed with at night. Nobody cares. The problem is what you're wearing as you're marching down the street in front of kids. Because I shouldn't have to turn to a 3-year-old, shouldn't be turning to their parents asking, why is that guy on a collar? They shouldn't. And I know I'm going to get lambasted by somebody and be called hateful and a bigot because I just think small kids like that little girl can't be more than 6 years old, the little blonde girl right there. I just don't think she should be exposed to images of scantily clad men and women wearing fetish gear because I think that's grooming and I think that's wrong. And I think that is preparing that child to be apt for sexual assault later on in life. I'm saying it because if they think it's normal, they won't tell their parent when they're getting sexually assaulted. That's the problem. And this used to be illegal. Last I checked, it's illegal to expose yourself to children. Now your taxpayer funds are busing kids to school with it. Not busing kids to pride parades. Not only that, but then we discover we have something called JCPS Pride. What is JCPS Pride? Well, a school organization. Now, some people may say, look, this is just a private club not involving the school. Don't let them lie to you. And we can prove that. See, if you go to one of JCPS's Pride's event signups, they use Google Forms. At the end of that Google form, and I had to research this, but at the bottom of that Google form, what's it say? It says, this form was generated inside of JCPS systems. They are using, one way or another, they're using school resources for this JCPS group. What's JC? Well, let's show you what they were kind enough to post on Twitter what their agenda was from their slide. Let's see here. Here we go. JCPS Pride 2021 to 2022 goals. Let's start off there first. Create a safe, welcoming spade for JCPS employees in the LGBTQIA plus community and their allies. A welcoming spade. Now, first, I don't know what shovels have to do with any of this. Okay, I've got a lot of questions about why are we creating welcoming shovels for employees, okay? Are they doing manual labor? Are we painting rainbows on the shovels so when people have to dig a hole with said shovel, they feel more inclusive while they're doing it? Or is it perhaps that the people we're paying to educate our children are not even able to proofread their probably most important slide and not pick up the misspelled space and then take a picture of it and tweet it out onto Twitter?
How many teachers are in this?
There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 JCPS staff and employees, probably mostly teachers, attending this conference, including several that are wearing masks, it appears, inside their homes, which also makes me question their intelligence. But they're misspelling space, taking a picture of it and then posting it on Twitter. And these people are paid tens of thousands of dollars, on average $55K a year, to educate your children. They don't know how to spell space. Moving on, though. They want to host events that promote our employee resource group and build community, share resources with members, and increase JCPS Pride membership. Now, I was told by Lady Gaga that you were born this way. How do you recruit people into being born your way if they were born their way? Maybe they were just born straight. Yet a lot of them aren't even identifying as your standard LG or B. They're one of these other 16 other, 20 other letters. But they're saying we need to increase the membership. We need to actively seek out people and bring them into our fold. Now, either they're born the way or they weren't. I don't understand how you recruit for this. Doesn't make any sense to me. Unless, of course, you're admitting the fact that they're not born this way. They're indoctrinated and they're taught this. And I think that's the real thing here, isn't it? That's why your goal is to increase membership, because you need to bring more people into your fold. You need to make sure that all the people out there that want to look and say, look, that isn't normal. You need to get rid of those people. You need to beat these people into submission, into believing that taking this 6-year-old girl to a pride parade is acceptable behavior. And it's not. It's not acceptable. In the same way of how people are really rebelling on this, Lightyear flops. That's right, Lightyear. Famous here, Buzz Lightyear flops, almost doing 50% of what was projected on opening day at box office, failing to unseat Jurassic Park in its second week. Still doing better, significantly better than Buzz Lightyear here. Why? Well, Disney, after Disney had a lesbian kiss between one of the main characters in the show. And they cut it. And then when Florida did their Don't Say Gay bill, they said, look, we're going to throw that back in there. We'll show them. Well, this led to 14 Muslim countries not showing the movie because, of course, we are, despite how much we're told we're bigoted and awful and terrible place, we're actually the most accepting of LGBTQ IA plus sign countries on the planet when compared to places like China or the Middle East. And so instead, but they kept it in there, and it has been flopping because, surprise, surprise, people don't want to take their kids to this stuff. Why? Because they're being bombarded with it constantly. Do you not feel that way? Do you not hear constantly these stories of kids being subjected to drag queen story hour on taxpayer dimes, or being bused to pride parades on taxpayer funds, or getting these kinds of things from Disney shoved down their throat? I don't have Disney Plus, but I was over at a friend's house who had Disney Plus, and they had a whole LGBTQ series, including things called like Out and other things, which are princesses or something about gender bending males. And this was under kids. This is for kids. I'm just tired of this, because I'm sorry, but if your kids are born that way, if there's something off, not even off, just something different about them, they intrinsically know this. You don't have to be taught to be straight. You intrinsically are, because it's nature. And yet you're trying to nurture them over this. And there's being a lot of pushback, and a lot of people are fed up about it, including myself. We're just tired of this. We're just tired. Can it not just be who you go home to at the end of the night? We don't care. We don't even care if in casual conversation you say, oh yeah, I was with my boyfriend. At this point, I don't care if you do your little pecks on the cheeks like I do with my wife in public, because I don't make out with my wife in public because PDA is not okay. But we're tired of it being shoved down our kids' throats. We're tired of having to sit there and say an abnormality is normal, when by definition it can't be, because once again, we can't procreate. If that was normal, we couldn't procreate. I've said this earlier. And these kinds of gender issues and social issues in general, whether it's CRT, gender theory, or what have you, is getting massive pushback. But yet they march on. They continue to do things like have our Air Force march to the rainbow flag and replace our American flags with rainbow flags, and use your taxpayer funds to paint rainbows on streets. When's the last time people spent taxpayer funds in order to make you feel more comfortable with the fact that you're straight? Well, that's all I have time for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening, for catching everything that's going on. Please tell your friends, tell your family, tell them listen to the Andrew Cooperrider show. And I thank you guys so much for joining us.